Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Do you want to become insanely successful? Do you want to be the go-to guru in your industry? Do you want to be talked about for all the right reasons? For over 40 years, Kevin Harrington has helped people just like you become significant influencers. Now he's broken the process down in the Key Person of Influence roadmap, and it's yours for free. Just text KPI to him at 727-888-2100. Text KPI to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free step-by-step guide. Text KPI to 727-888-2100 to get the recognition you deserve and experience the success as the go-to voice everyone listens to in your industry today.
Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today I have the good fortune to be joined by Steve Anderson, the best-selling author of the Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Seth, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited because your book is one of the Bibles that we use in our office with our team to work on our business. Let's go back in time a little bit, but why write the book? How'd you get inspired? How'd you get started?
So I've been in the insurance industry my entire career and was actually on a work group looking at how technology was changing the industry, how fast it was coming, and unfortunately for the industry, how slow it was adopting what was coming. And I really came up with this idea that the biggest risk businesses face today is actually not taking enough risk. So, coming from the insurance industry, that was kind of counterintuitive.
Right.
How could I even say that? So I started researching companies that had not made the transition well. Names we know: Blockbuster, BlackBerry, Kodak, Sears. Sure. Now, and those that had, certainly Google, Facebook, and Amazon. And came across the letters to shareholders that Jeff Bezos started writing in 1997. And frankly, read through all of them at one point and was amazed at how much he gave away of what most would consider their secret sauce. And he was out there, here's how we do it, here's what you need to know. And I realized there was a treasure trove of information there.
Awesome. And then, so obviously you started to apply that or learn from it. What inspires you to write the book about it?
Well, I actually, the first thing I did was I was going to give it away as a lead gen, right? So I did a one-page summary, what I called executive summary of each of the, at the time, 20 letters, and showed it actually to David Hancock and my wife, who actually works for David as a associate publisher for acquisitions. And they both came back almost immediately and said, this is a book. This is not a white paper giveaway lead gen. And so that really started a journey of about almost 2 years that led to the publication of the book.
Well, congratulations. It's obviously been a bestseller. It's an incredible book. You mentioned using it as lead gen. Lead gen for what?
So for me at the time, my focus had been on the insurance industry and really providing research, writing, speaking, consulting around emerging technologies and how to use them in your business to grow. And that really became the core idea of the book, this whole idea of you have to risk to grow. And so that now has just been taken forward. The 14 principles, the 4 cycles are all really around this idea of using Amazon as a case study for how to take risk appropriately. And in fact, I call Jeff Bezos the master of risk because he does it so well, and we can really learn a lot from him.
Absolutely. So what does your business look like now, having not only written the book, but learned from the writing process?
Well, I say a couple things. One part of the, I think, hope for the book was to broaden my current business niche broader, right? It was very narrowly focused on insurance agents and brokers, primarily in the US, a little bit in Canada. And now, even like you have said, I mean, the ideas are being brought to a wider range of businesses, and even myself, right? Taking that risk of going outside my comfort zone into an area that I think I was competent in, but certainly was taking a risk, even talking about this to a wider audience. So, my speaking has at least was projected to be, until we had our pandemic here over the last few months, has changed that a little bit. But even that, my whole mindset is, okay, one, what does this make possible? Not what is this taken away, but what do I have to pivot now to do, and what things can I learn and move forward with? So it dramatically has impacted myself, certainly.
And then what about the marketplace? Like, it's always nice, we mentioned at the beginning before we started, the anecdotal evidence, actually hearing stories from people who have learned or implemented from the book and results they've gotten. Obviously, Bezos has grown probably most valuable, is the richest man on the planet and the most valuable company in the world. You might have affected it on a smaller scale. So
Yes.
what are some of those things that you're hearing of people saying, hey, I did X, Y, and Z and it worked?
So I'll go back to a couple of the principles. So there are 14 total principles that are broken down into 4 what I call cycles. So test, build, accelerate, and scale. And I believe any business, regardless of the size, is going through those 4 cycles all the time, right? A new product, you're retesting. Then you have to, once you get some success, you build, etc. So I think a couple things have resonated with people. One is actually principle number 1 in the test cycle, which is encourage successful failure. And typically you don't hear success and failure in the same breath. And in fact, just prior to us, jumping on this call, I'm working on an article that the tentative title right now is "Failure Has to Be an Option." And I went back to the Apollo 13 movie, Ron Howard's movie about the Apollo 13 mission. And Gene Kranz, who was flight director, was quoted, or actually said in the movie, right, that failure is not an option. Well, the problem with that is he never said that. That was the script writer, but that's sort of become a mindset. Failure's not an option. And I don't think that's correct. And if I go back to Amazon, one of their core tenets at Amazon, one of the core things they build into their employees from the very beginning is that you've got to experiment. And Bezos says an experiment by its very nature means you're going to fail. And as a company, Amazon, we need to grow the size of our failures as the size of our company grows, because otherwise we're not going to move the needle enough to make it a significant difference in our business. So this idea of encouraging failure, well, the problem is most businesses actually punish failure. If you're an employee, and I'm convinced that employees aren't afraid of failure, they're afraid of the consequences of failure. And so you've got to have experimentation, which will lead to some failures, but what do you learn from it? That leads to invention, and then you can innovate. So kind of another thought there is, I hear all the time, we need to innovate. And I don't believe that's true. A company needs to experiment and invent, and then they can innovate. So I think that's that idea of embracing failure. And I always have to pause here, because I don't want people to think it means it doesn't matter what you do. Amazon's very intentional about protecting the downside. They don't go to try and fail, but they know it's part of the process. So how do we do that and learn from it and move on?
That's great. I love it's a writer downer that we need to increase the size of the failure. We need to fail bigger.
Well, actually, he said, and this is probably 2 or 3 years ago now, we need more billion-dollar failures. Well, the problem with that, for me at least,
Right.
I think for a lot of small businesses, they can't conceive of that as an option, as opposed to, protecting what got them there. In fact, one of the things I say is that the biggest risk a successful business faces is their success, because they start protecting what got them to be successful, as opposed to experimenting, failing, inventing that next thing. And I think we can look at Amazon and say they have been quite successful at continuing to invent new businesses that helps them continue to be successful.
Absolutely. Now, there are many, many people who analyze, for example, Warren Buffett's
Yes.
shareholder letters.
Mhm.
There's probably a whole sub-industry devoted to, hey, what is he going to buy next so we can try and get ahead of him? Or
Right.
how can we profit or follow the same principles? Why do you think it is that you were the only one? There's books written about Bezos,
Yes.
but there's none written though about what you wrote about. Why do you think that is? Why do you think everybody else is missing the boat?
Well, I think I've been asked that and actually thought about that, because, like, who am I to write this, right? I'm just some guy.
Some guy, right? It's not like you were VP at Amazon.
I'm not VP at it. I've never worked for Amazon. I don't have an insider view. I think a couple things. One is Amazon is just 25 years old. Warren Buffett's been writing letters for 40 years. So I think there's a longevity kind of idea there. Amazon has grown, when you look at their growth, really over the last 5, 6, 7, let's say 10 years.
Right. It wasn't too long ago that the .com bubble burst, and people
exactly.
were, is Amazon just selling books, and are they going to make it?
Yep.
And the share price was at something we all wish we bought at.
Yep. Early 2000s, and really even into the mid, 2000s, Amazon was kind of just there. So that was sort of why me. Well, part of it is,
why not you?
Why not?
Jeff would say, why not you? Take the risk.
Take the risk. And I think that risk mindset that I brought to the book is just something that's unique because of my background in the insurance industry and risk management and helping businesses, right? All of those kinds of things gave me a different perspective. And actually, I think a unique one because it was from an outsider. And there's a couple of really good books from some insiders, about Amazon also. A couple of them I relied upon and quoted in my book because there's some really good information there. But I think looking at it from the outside to the inside, and frankly, seeing the patterns that I saw there and what I came up with in the 14 principles, I hear from people who read the book, the cycles and the principles really resonate as a framework to begin looking at their own business and what they can do.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you've created, maybe intentionally, maybe not, a process where you read through shareholder letters, distilled down principles, and wrote a book about it. Is there a book about Apple? Is there a book about another really successful company coming? You could almost have a series.
I could almost have a series, and it certainly has been suggested by my publisher.
And my publisher as well. Full disclosure.
So David, he likes serious things. And so the way I'm answering that right now is that's like asking your wife, a month after she had your first child, if she's ready for the second one. So, I need a little breathing room.
That hasn't erased the memory of the labor yet.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the short answer to that is I'm already kind of looking at maybe even Buffett. Right. And again, as you said, there's a lot because he's done a lot over a lot of years. I'm not sure I could bring anything new there.
I think the difference would be everybody else, because I've read many of those books. Everyone else other than the Snowball biography everybody else who's analyzing the letters is looking for investment principles.
Yes.
They're looking for how can I invest like him? What is he going to buy next? How could I guess ahead? What else might he be looking at? Or how can I follow those principles and invest successfully? Nobody's looking at your angle because they're all writing investment papers or investment books off of
Correct.
it. Nobody's saying, hey, how'd he grow the business? Forget about what he's buying. What about the business that he built? About the management systems they've got in place to run hundreds of companies successfully? And how do they pick the people as opposed to just worried about what his next stock pick is going to be?
Yeah, that's exactly, Seth, what I had been thinking in terms of the angle that would be unique that I might be able to take. So I certainly have been poking around a little bit with a few industries and just to see.
Especially since you were in financial services, he'd be a layup.
Well, and I've already, again, I was just thinking that actually when you were talking because of Geico and Berkshire Hathaway insurance, he's got a large insurance.
They own a reinsurance company too.
Reinsurance company. And, so I have already been following some of his letters from that perspective. So it wouldn't be much of a stretch to look in. But, it was a long process doing 21 letters of Bezos, thinking about 40 plus letters, reading through them all. We'll see. But I do think that different mindset or perspective and viewpoint might be something worth looking at.
That makes sense. What do you like best about what you do?
That's an interesting question. I would say I like best when I'm able to help someone. And frankly, what's interesting about the Bezos letters is it's certainly business, but I've had people come up to me that have read the book. One I can think of in particular, and she was working on strategy with her church. And she said, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much this helped us think through, some of these issues.
I was going to say, if there hasn't been a career as a consultant already, there is
yes.
one.
Well,
you can certainly build one off the book.
Yes, and I certainly am getting more, requests for that. But I think having people resonate with an idea that I was able to see and put together, I think that's what I enjoy most. And seeing success, right? Seeing people take it and make changes and do something better.
That makes, their passion comes across. It's obvious. So you wrote a book that has sparked in some small way a movement that may or may not have existed before. What are 3 of your favorite books other than your own?
I could go. I'm a pretty voracious reader, so I'm thinking of some that I've just finished, and maybe some classics. So let me think of a classic for me. Probably first read it in the 80s. Was hang on. We might have to edit the pause out here while I think of it. Michael Gerber's The E-Myth.
Yep.
Right. So the whole concept of working on your business, not in your business. And that's just resonated with me through the years, I would say. So kind of a older one there. I could pick any number of Seth Godin books just in terms of how he makes me think. And probably the most recent one, really 2. One I'm halfway through, the other I just finished, was Creativity, Inc., the story of Pixar. By Ed Cantwell. So Ed Cantwell's president and one of the 3 founders, along with John Lasseter and Steve Jobs. Really interesting, and it fits really well in the kind of risk-taking idea in terms of how they were able to do the animation the way they would do it and bring creativity out of people and all of those kinds of things. And the other one I'm probably 3/4 of the way through is what's the title of the book? It's about Netflix, and it's actually the first CEO, not Reed Hastings. He was the first investor, whose name again is escaping me right now, but kind of that early startup, how Netflix got going. And I just enjoy some of those stories, and partly because
there got to be some principles there, given that they were willing to lose money on their core business of direct mail DVDs just to eventually support streaming.
Exactly. And the whole subscription model that Netflix is known for, right? Monthly, get as many DVDs. that actually came a year to 18 months later. They ended up primarily selling DVDs through the mail because they couldn't get people to rent them. So it's just interesting how businesses pivot based on the issues, the problems, what they learn from customers, what they like, what they don't like. And then later, how they pivoted from DVD by mail to streaming. And now that is their primary way. So anyways, to me, it's just an interesting story of how to pivot. Actually, I think how to watch trends, and that's something Bezos.
I'm gonna say there's your next book, right? Because you could apply, you could take lessons from many success. I mean, it's almost a good to great. Like here's the pivot. Half the businesses that pivoted and worked, half that tried the same pivot and failed.
And failed, and what's the difference, or what happened, or what did they do differently? So
awesome.
So anyway,
when the next book comes out, we'd be happy to have you back to talk about it.
Oh, that'd be great. I thank you.
So you give advice not only in the book but every day in your business. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice I've ever been given. It has come from a couple of different places, but I think the advice is comes in. I'm trying to think different ways I want to say it. Ship it. It doesn't have to be perfect. 80% is typically good enough to get something out the door.
Yeah.
And that's always resonated with me because I tend to like to make sure things are just perfect. So part of that was Seth Godin, and he had a little pamphlet called Ship It that I still have on my shelf. Part of that came from Dan Sullivan, who's a strategic coach.
Yep.
And he had a white paper, pamphlet, whatever, I don't know how long ago now, but it's called the 80% rule. And that, again, resonated with me, partly helped me get the book, right? The book doesn't have everything I wanted in it.
Oh, of course. It's funny. My wife's edited her book that came out this month 3 times.
Yep.
After we edited it. And I said, she wanted to edit it. I said, honey, just get it out there. It's never going to be perfect.
It's never going to be perfect. And there's always a second book.
Yeah. I pulled out a couple of New York Times bestsellers on my shelf and said, look, this sold 100,000 copies. There's still typos in it. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay. That's exactly right. And
nobody's
sometimes
going to return it because of you spelled the word wrong.
Yeah. And the worst they can do is send you an email and tell you the word spelled wrong. So yes.
Exactly. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. We know it's incredibly valuable. For our folks watching and listening who haven't read the book, who want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them?
Certainly Amazon. It's available there. And if you, for international listeners, it's actually being translated into 16 languages. So,
wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's and actually what's really interesting is Asia has a real interest in it. So Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Ukraine just is publishing. I mean, so anyway, just fascinating. So kind of wherever you buy books. And I do have, if you buy the book, a couple of additional kind of workbooks and helps to get the most out of it at thebezosletters.com.
Awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. Steve Anderson, thebezosletters.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Seth, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.